So hello everyone, we continue with our chapter 3 in this lecture. We already started with chapter 3, which is the transport layer, in the last lecture, and we completed many of the concepts related to the transport layer. In this lecture, we are going to continue with the remaining concepts of the transport layer, which is connection oriented transport, which is TCP. Then we are going to talk about principles of congestion control, and then we are going to talk about TCP congestion control. How does the TCP handles the congestion control? Alright, so let's start with this. We have already talked about in detail regarding the TCP, transmission control protocol, which is an important protocol of the transport layer. It's a connection oriented protocol. Connection oriented means before sending data to the receiver, TCP makes a handshake or makes a connection with the receiver, a logical connection. So the connection is followed in the 3 steps. First of all, connection is established, then data is transferred, and then connection is terminated. So just quickly let's have an overview of the TCP, the characteristics of the TCP. First thing is it's point to point. There is a point to point connection establishment. So one sender, one receiver, just like the circuit switching. We talked about circuit switching also in chapter 1. It is also point to point, one sender and one receiver. Similarly, TCP is also point to point, one sender and one receiver. It is reliable in order byte stream. So it's a reliable protocol, and it transmits the bytes or the data in order. So the data, how it is sent, it will be received in the same order at the receiver. There are no message boundaries. It's a pipeline. TCP congestion and flow control, it sets the window size. We learned about the 2 protocols, the pipeline protocol. How does the TCP sends the segments? Like it defines a window, and in the window it puts like 3 or 4 frames. So as and when the frames are delivered, it keeps on adding the segments in the pipeline. So there are send and receive buffers at both the sides. So we have at the sender side there is a TCP send buffer. Buffer is nothing but a temporary memory location, and at the receiver side we have a TCP receiver buffer. So TCP segment buffer, before sending, the segment is first of all saved in the TCP send buffer area. Then from the buffer area it is transmitted on the transmission medium. At the receiver side, the segment is first of all received in the buffer area, and after that it is sent to the application layer. Next is TCP is full duplex data. That means there is a bidirectional flow in the same direction. Full duplex means at the same time both sender and receiver can send. So actually we have 3, the communication can be either simplex, half duplex or full duplex. Simplex means only one side can always send, just like in the client and server. Server can always send, right? So, or we can say the master computer can always send. So simplex means the data always flows from one end only. Just like in your computers, data always flows from keyboard to the monitor. Never ever the data flows from monitor to the computer. So that's an example of the simplex communication. Half duplex means both parties, both sender and receiver can send the data, but at a particular time only one person. So for example, in half duplex, if the sender is sending the data, receiver cannot send. If the receiver is sending the data, sender cannot send. Example of half duplex is the walkie-talkies. You might have seen the walkie-talkie in the hand of the policemen or the security personnel which are standing on the airports, or the security guards. Last one is the full duplex. Full duplex is you can say quite more advanced form of communication. Full duplex means both sender and receiver can send data to each other and at the same time. So it's a bidirectional data flow. In half duplex also it's a bidirectional data flow, but only one can send at a particular time. So it's a bidirectional data flow in the same connection. So in the same connection, both sender and receiver can transmit at the same time. And it defines the maximum segment size. Maximum segment size means what is the maximum number of bytes that a segment can carry. Next is, it's a connection oriented. That means there is a handshaking, exchange of control messages between the sender and the receiver before the data is exchanged, just like the circuit switching. It's a flow control. TCP has a flow control. That means sender will not bombard the receiver with a lot number of segments. That means sender will not overwhelm the receiver. It will send the segments at a particular flow which a receiver can handle. So this is all the characteristics of the TCP. Moving ahead. This is a TCP segment structure, very important to understand the segment structure. You will see this type of segment structure when we start with the Wireshark, maybe in week 5 in our lab. So we are going to talk about all these segment structures in the lab also. Okay, so the TCP segment structure. This is a TCP segment structure. These are the fields in the segment structure. The size of the TCP segment structure is 32 bits. Sorry, it's not 32 bits. Yeah, it's 32 bits. The size of the TCP header is actually 20 bytes. Source port and destination port, they are 32 bits. So the size is different. Let's talk about TCP header is 20 bytes. But whereas UDP header is, I think it's 8 bytes. UDP header is 8 bytes and TCP header is 20 bytes. This is TCP header or the segment structure. This is 20 bytes. So let's talk about the TCP segment. It is almost some fields are similar to the some fields are similar to the UDP segment or UDP datagram. Okay, so let's talk about this one, source port and destination port. Source port and destination port number are used to specify the port number of the source application and the destination port number of the source application. Next we talk about sequence number. Sequence number is 32 bits, that means 4 bytes, and acknowledgement number is also 32 bits. These are used by TCP sender and receiver for sending the reliable data transfer service. After this we have a receive window. Receive window is 16 bits, that means 2 bytes. This is used for flow control, and this is used to indicate the number of bytes that receiver can accept from the sender. Then we have the header field over here, header length field. This is a 4 bit, sorry, not even a byte, it's 4 bit. It specifies the length of the TCP header in 32-bit words. TCP header, it can be of variable length. It can be of variable length because of the TCP options field. Because options, this is of variable length. It can have any size. Then we have over here options field also. This one, options field. Options field is of variable length and it is used when a sender and receiver negotiate for the maximum segment size or for a size of the window or the window scaling factor. Now if you see this part is not used. Then we have, if you see UAP, RSF, these are the flags, 1 bit each. So there are 6 flags. So this is 1 bit each and total they carry 6 bits. So the flag field contains 6 bits. Now we have A stands for acknowledgement flag. It is used to indicate that the value is carried in the acknowledgement field is valid. Then we have reset, SYN and FIN. So this one, R, S and F. Reset, SYN and FIN. These flags are used for the connection establishment in the beginning and for the connection termination at the end. Then we have this P flag. It stands for push. It indicates that receiver should pass the data to the upper layer immediately. And finally we have this U. U stands for urgent. Urgent bit is used to indicate that there is data in this segment that the sending side upper layer entry has marked it as urgent. And next we have the urgent data pointer. If you see over here, urgent data pointer. The location of the last byte of this urgent is indicated in the 16-bit urgent data pointer, and TCP informs the receiving side of the upper layer when there is some urgent data, and it needs to pass it a pointer to the end of the urgent data. Checksum is used to calculate the errors. If there are errors in the data when it is received, so this field is used to check the errors. It performs some calculations on the received data. Push data, P is not mostly it is not used. Urgent data is also generally it is not used. This is receive window specifies how many bytes receiver is willing to accept. So this actually controls the flow control. So this is actually related to the flow control, so that the receiver is not overwhelmed if the by the sender by sending too many segments at a particular time. The last one contains application data. Application data is the user message, and it can have the variable length. Alright, now in this we talked about sequence number and acknowledgement number. It's very important. When the TCP sends the segments, it puts number on the segments so as the segments can be differentiated from each other. So these are two important fields, sequence number and the acknowledgement number, and these are the critical part of the TCP's reliable data transfer service. So sequence number, what is a sequence number? It's a byte stream number of the first byte in the segment's data. So every segment is always numbered by the TCP. So sequence number is just a number on the of the first byte in the segment data, and it is chosen as a random number. Okay, so now what is acknowledgement number? It is the sequence number of the next byte expected from the other side. It can be the cumulative acknowledgement also. Alright, now let's check over here. We have host A and host B. The first host A, let's say it types letter C in the segment and sends it to the host B, puts the sequence number 42 as a random number chosen for the first byte in the segment data. Acknowledgement number is 79 and data is C. Now after host B receives this data, it has to send the acknowledgement. Now in the acknowledgement number, the sequence number will be whatever the first segment that sender has sent to the receiver. So this acknowledgement number will become the sequence number in this acknowledgement segment. Now this is the acknowledgement segment. Now here, if you see over here, acknowledgement number is 43, but here the sequence number for 42. Now what does acknowledgement number specifies here? The acknowledgement number specifies here the next expected sequence of the segment which the source must send to the receiver. So this means that the next segment that host A will send to host B, it should carry the sequence number 43. This is what is the purpose of the acknowledgement number. So acknowledgement number specifies the sequence number, the expected sequence number of the next byte which the sender will send to the receiver. Now host A receives the acknowledgement and then it sends the final segment for connection establishment or whatever. So if you see over here, the sequence number is 43. Whatever the acknowledgement number was here, sequence number is 43, and here the acknowledgement number is incremented by 1. So this is how the connection establishment takes place, and this is how the exchange of messages takes place. The first sequence number is just a random number chosen by the host, and even the acknowledgement number. After that, it should be in the increasing order. If you see the acknowledgement number, the first acknowledgement sent by the receiver is the increment of the first sequence number, and the second acknowledgement number sent by the sender is the increment of the first acknowledgement sent by the sender. Now, if there are out of order segments received by the receiver. So for example, sender has sent 4 segments. So receiver first of all receives segment number 2, then it receives segment number 3, then it receives segment number 1, and then it receives segment number 4. So these segments have arrived out of order at the receiver. So how does the receiver handles these out of order segments? So TCP does not specify anything for handling the out of order segments. This is up to the software developer or up to the implementer how to handle these out of order segments if TCP protocol is used. Alright, now TCP, RTT and timeout time. We discussed about RTT in the previous lecture and timeout time, because each packet has a certain time specified, maybe 150 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds something. So in that timeout period, segment is sent and acknowledgement must be received by the sender. So that is called as time during that time lapse. So if during that time lapse acknowledgement is not received, that means sender will assume either the packet is lost or the acknowledgement is lost. Now the question is how to set the TCP timeout value, how the timeout value is sent. It should be longer than the round trip time, right? We understood the round trip time also. It should be, timeout value should be a little larger than the round trip time, but round trip time varies for each segment. If the segment is large, round trip time may vary for it. So timeout time should be larger than RTT, round trip time. But how much larger? Should it be too large or how much larger? Now, if it is too short than RTT, then there will be a premature time and there will be unnecessary transmission. So for example, if RTT round trip time is maybe 100 milliseconds, alright, so and if we give timeout time as 80 milliseconds, in 80 milliseconds the segment may not be received or acknowledgements may not be received. So there will be unnecessary retransmissions, there will be unnecessary duplications occupying the buffer. But if it is too long, then there will be slow reaction to the segment loss. Either the receiver has to wait for a longer time or the sender has to wait for a longer time to react that a particular packet is not received or a particular acknowledgement is not received. So it should not be too longer than RTT or it should not be too shorter than RTT. So how to estimate the RTT? Now the question is, we have a sample RTT. Sample RTT is measured, it's a time which is measured from the segment transmission until acknowledgement is received. So a sample RTT, when the first segment is sent, a sample RTT is measured. So when the segment is sent and after how much duration the acknowledgement is received. So this forms the sample RTT. It is this time is measured, segment transmission until the acknowledgement received. So retransmission, we are not going to count any retransmission time. For example, if this segment is lost, we need to send it again, or this acknowledgement is lost, we need to receive it again. We are not going to count any retransmission time. Sample RTT will vary and we want another estimated RTT. So estimated RTT is the average round trip time of the several recent measures. It is not just current sample RTT. Sample RTT is actually the round trip time for maybe 1 or 2 segments, but average RTT or the estimated RTT is the round trip time which we average for several recent measurements. For example, it can be for the first 10 segments or can be for the first 15 segments or something like that. Because the sample RTT time will fluctuate from segment to segment because of the congestion in routers and varying load on the end systems, and because of these fluctuations, any given sample round trip time may not be of any use or it may be atypical. So in order to estimate a typical round trip time and in order to be more calculative, that's why take sort of a average of sample RTT values. So TCP maintains an average called estimate RTT of the sample RTT values, and after obtaining a new sample RTT, TCP updates the estimated RTT by using the formula. We are not going to discuss the formulas and not going to discuss much in detail. Alright, so that was the segment structure. Now we talk about the reliable data transfer. How does the TCP handles the reliable data transfer? Although these are given much in detail, this one segment structure, but we are not going to talk much about it. We discussed that TCP creates RDT, reliable data transfer service, on the top of the IP. Transport layer is the upper layer, network layer is the lower layer. Transport layer uses two protocols, TCP and UDP. TCP is reliable. Network layer uses only one protocol, which is IP. IP is unreliable. So TCP creates, when we are using TCP on the transport layer, it creates reliable data transfer service on the top of unreliable IP service of the network layer. So TCP's reliable data transfer service ensures that the data stream and the process reads out of its TCP buffer is not corrupted. It is without gaps, without duplication, and they are in the sequence. That means byte stream is exactly the same byte stream that was sent by the end system. So what is sent is exactly what is received. So that is about the reliable data transfer. Now it uses the pipeline segments, cumulative acknowledgements, and it uses single retransmission timer. We discussed the pipeline segments in the previous lecture, cumulative acknowledgements in the previous lecture. Now the single retransmission timer. So TCP timer management use only single retransmission timer even if there are multiple segments have been transmitted but not yet acknowledged segments. So this actually provides a reliable data transfer. Retransmissions, if there needs to be retransmissions, how they can be judged or how they can occur by using the timeout events or by using the duplicate acknowledgement. So within the timeout period, the acknowledgement is not received, so then the retransmission of the segment will occur. Or if a sender receives a duplicate acknowledgement, so that means the receiver has not received a particular segment, it will send that segment again. So this is how the decision of retransmitting a segment by the sender is done. Initially it considers a simplified TCP sender, and it ignores the duplicate acknowledgements, ignore the flow control and the congestion control. So what are the sender events, TCP sender events that are done? Data is received from the application, because at the top of TCP, at the top of transport layer, we have the application layer. Data is received from the application layer. After receiving the message or the data, TCP creates a segment. When TCP is used, we call it as a segment. When UDP is used, we call it as a user datagram. So a segment is created with the sequence number Sequence number is nothing, it's a byte stream number of the first byte in the segment. It starts the timer if it is not already running, and it waits. There is also a timeout interval which is called as the expiration interval. So if during that timeout period, within that time frame, the acknowledgement is not received from the receiver, it will retransmit the segment because it caused the timeout, and it will restart the timer again. Sender will restart the timer again. Now acknowledgement, if after the acknowledgement is received, if acknowledges previously unacknowledged segment, so if the receiver has acknowledged the previously sent but unacknowledged segments, sender will update what is known to be acknowledged. So sender will update that, for example, sender has sent 4 segments, right? So receiver has acknowledged first 3 segments. So it will update that first 3 have been acknowledged and the last one is yet to be acknowledged, the 4th segment. It will start the timer if there are outstanding segments. Now let's talk about the flow control. So flow control, to handle the flow control so that the TCP does not overwhelms the receiver, there are sender and receiver buffers. So we have a TCP data in buffer and a spare room. So receiving side of a TCP connection has a receive buffer. This is, for example, a receive window. This hole is for the receiver buffer. Half of it is occupying data and half of it has a spare room to put the more incoming data. Application processes, why we have a buffer? Because application processes may be slow at reading from the buffer. That's why everything is first of all stored in the buffer of the receiver, and then one by one it is delivered to the application layer. So flow control is basically sender will not overflow the receiver's buffer by transmitting too much or too fast. So for example, receiver buffer may handle only 30 segments in a while. So flow control means sender should not send too many or at such a speed that receiver cannot handle the segments. There should be a speed matching between sender and the receiver. So matching the sending rate to the receiving application's drain rate, that is called as the flow control. Alright, so we have over here the explanation. Now for example, suppose TCP receiver discards out of order segments, right? So just like we did in the go back N protocol. So let's assume that if some out of order segment has arrived, it discards it. So now there is a spare room in the buffer, and how the received room size is calculated. Received buffer, whatever is the size, minus last byte received minus last byte read. This is how the formula is done. And receiver in the beginning, it advertises the size of its buffer, or we call it as the spare room, by including the value of the receive window in the segments. Sender limits unacknowledged data to the receive window. That means it guarantees that it will not full the buffer of the receiver. Alright, so that was about the characteristics of the TCP. Now we move on to the next part, which is the principles of the congestion control. Congestion is there are too many things on the network, right? So there are too many sources sending too many data very fast, and it is not possible for the network to handle all those data. So in that case, what will happen? Some of the data will be dropped or it will be corrupted, just like you have experienced congestion on the road. So for example, if we have a road, the road is designed to handle, like for example, 5 cars at a particular time. Now consider a case when we have 500 cars on the road at a particular time. So cars will be moving very, very slowly because the road is quite narrow. So that is called as the congestion. So congestion means when too many sources, they are sending the data too fast for a network to handle, which becomes difficult for the network to handle. Congestion control is not related to the flow control. So what happens in this case, some of the packets will be lost or some of the packets will be delayed. So what happens during the congestion on the network? Either you will take too much time to reach to your destination or you will change your route. So that means the packet is lost or you will not go anywhere. So it's one of the top 10 important problem in the computer network research. Alright, so we have two broad approaches to handle the congestion control: end-to-end congestion and network assisted congestion. Now what is end-to-end congestion and what is network assisted congestion? Let's talk about. So let's talk about end-to-end congestion control. In end-to-end congestion control, the network layer does not provide any explicit support to the transport layer for the congestion control services. So there is no explicit feedback from the network layer regarding the congestion control. Network layer does not provide that there is congestion on the network, you should send less number of segments or something like this. Even the presence of congestion in the network must be inferred by the end systems. So it is the responsibility of the host to sense about the congestion in the network based on the observed packet behavior. So if it is taking too long for the receiver to receive a packet, receiver can infer that there can be congestion on the network. Or if the sender is receiving duplicate acknowledgement or no acknowledgement during the timeout period, sender can sense that there is a congestion in the network. So it is the responsibility of the end systems to infer the congestion on the network based on the observed based on the packet behavior. This approach is taken by TCP. So TCP must necessarily take this end-to-end approach towards the congestion control, because IP of the network layer does not provide any feedback to the end systems regarding the congestion control. So TCP segment loss or the acknowledgement loss or the duplicate acknowledgement is taken as an indication of the network congestion, and TCP decreases the size of the window accordingly. Next approach to handle is the network assisted congestion control. So as the name says, there is no network, there is no feedback from the network, but there will be a feedback from the network. So with the network assisted congestion control, the network layer components, for example the routers, they provide the feedback to the sender regarding the state of the congestion on the network. Now this feedback can be in the form of the single bit indicating the congestion at a link, or it can be in the form of explicit rate. A sender should send at, and this approach is used in the ATM available bitrate congestion control. So this approach was also taken in the early IBM systems, and it was proposed for the TCP/IP networks. Alright, so let's now move ahead. Let's talk more about the TCP congestion control here. So that was the two approaches that we can take for the handling the congestion control. Alright, so how does the TCP senders determine their sending rates, such as they don't congest the network and at the same time make use of all the available bandwidth? So TCP answers both these questions, how it determines the sending rates. They don't congest the network, and at the same time it makes use of all the bandwidth or the bandwidth that is provided to the TCP for its transmission of the segments. TCP answers these questions by using the following guiding principles, which we are going to learn in this slide. Alright, so for the first point here, congestion of the network. So lost segment implies congestion, so TCP the sending rate of the TCP, sender's rate, should be decreased. So when the segment is lost. An acknowledged segment indicates that the network is delivering the sender segment to the receiver, so sender's rate can be increased. So this is how the TCP can adjust to the congestion rate of the network. Second is bandwidth. Now TCP's strategy for adjusting its transmission rate is to increase its rate in response to the arriving acknowledgement. So if the acknowledgement arrives quite earlier than the timeout period, that means within the half of the timeout period or before the half, so it adjusts its time of response. It increases its time transmission rate in response to the arriving acknowledgement until a loss event occurs. So after that it decreases its transmission rate. So for example, if the acknowledgement arrives within half of the timeout period, it will increase the number of segments. It may send 2 segments again then. So until that event, when the loss of the acknowledgement is encountered or loss of segment is encountered, after that it will decrease its transmission rate. So these are the 2 approaches used by the TCP. Alright, now for handling the congestion control at each side of a TCP, that means at the sender and the receiver, what are the things required? We have a receive buffer at the receiver side which will store the segments before delivering it to the application layer. Sender side will have a sender buffer which will store the segment before sending them on the transmission medium. And we have several other variables like last byte rate. It tells us what was the last byte rate. RWND stands for received window. It is the size of the received window, that means the size of the buffer. TCP congestion control mechanism operating at the sender keeps track of another variable. We have the congestion window which is denoted by the CWND. So at the sender side there is another variable which is called as the CWND, congestion window. And the purpose of this window is to impose the rate at which sender can send the traffic. So basically this CWND variable or the window keeps track how many segments at a particular time a sender should send so as to keep track of the congestion control on the network. Alright, so how should a TCP sender determine the rate at which it should send? So sender limits its transmission like last byte sent minus last byte acknowledged. For example, sender has sent 4 bytes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it should be less than equal to the congestion window. Let's assume that the variable in the congestion window is 6. So last byte sent is 4 and maybe the last byte acknowledged is 2. For the first 2 the sender has acknowledged, so 4 minus 2 is 2. It should be less than the size of the congestion window. This is the formula used. Or roughly we can say that sending rate should be equal to the congestion window size divided by round trip time. It is measured in the bytes per second. Congestion window is a dynamic function. It can be increased or decreased based on the network congestion. How does a TCP sender perceives that there is a congestion on the path between itself and the destination? Of course, simply by the loss event. It can be simply by the loss event or there are duplicate acknowledgements. So it is either by the timeout, or that means no acknowledgement is received, or 3 duplicate acknowledgements from the receiver. So in that case TCP sender will reduce the size or the rate of the congestion window after the loss. So there are 3 mechanisms for this: AIMD, slow start, and conservative after timeout events. So what is AIMD? AIMD is additive increase, multiplicative decrease. So these are the 3 mechanisms: AIMD, slow start, and conservative after timeout events. So either additive increase, multiplicative decrease, or in the beginning should be slow, that means should be slow in sending the segments, or it should, after the timeout event occurs, it should be conservative. That means it should decrease the rate of the size of the congestion window. Alright, okay, so AIMD, we are going to talk about the first approach. Additive increase and multiplicative decrease, we are going to talk only about this approach. So this approach increases the transmission rate. Transmission rate is window size, probing for a usable bandwidth, because at the same time TCP has to utilize the bandwidth at the full rate until the loss occurs. So additive increase the congestion window by one maximum segment size every RTT. So for example, first send only one segment, then 2, then 3, then 4. This is additive increase, right? We are increasing the size of the congestion window. Multiplicative decrease, cut the congestion window in half after the loss. If loss occurs, cut the size of the congestion window in half. For example, first segment is sent, then second, then third, then fourth, then 5, then 6. So the size of the congestion window is like 6. Now for example, at this time, the size of the timeout event occurs, so it will cut the size of the congestion window to half at this point, that is 3. So for example, if it is starting sending additive increase in the and if it occurs like, for example, congestion here, it's a multiplicative decrease. At this point, for example, the size was like congestion window 16 bytes. So at this point the timeout event occurs. So if you see over here, the congestion window is reduced to half, which is 8. So again, when it starts sending linearly, it is increased. At this point, if the timeout occurs, the congestion window size is reduced to half. So this is the approach of additive increase, multiplicative decrease. Okay, so slow start. What is slow start? Slow start means it starts the congestion window by 1 MSS, one maximum size segment. So for example, let's consider over here MSS is 500 and RTT is 200 milliseconds. So it will measure the initial rate, how to utilize the bandwidth. And how to utilize the bandwidth, we have over here the sending rate should be in the bytes per second, congestion window by RTT. So we can calculate over here the size of the congestion window divided by RTT. Congestion window will be calculated by MSS. We will convert this MSS into, because it is bytes, we will convert it into kilobytes. So 500 divided by 1000 will make it 0.5 KB, right? And RTT is 200 milliseconds. We will convert it into milliseconds, seconds. So 200 divided by 1000, because in a millisecond there are 10 to raised to the power minus 3 seconds. So it will be 0.2 seconds. So we can calculate the sending rate. Sending rate is 0.5 divided by 0.2, which is 2.5 kilobits per second, and it can be rounded off to 20 kilobits per second, right? So it can ramp up to respectable rate of 20 kilobits per second. So available bandwidth should be greater than this MSS divided by RT, which is the sending rate. So it is desirable to quickly ramp up to the respectable rate, and when the connection begins, increase the rate exponentially fast until the first loss event. So in the beginning, increase the rate exponentially, but after the first loss event, decrease it. So with the slow start, for example, when the connection begins, increase the rate exponentially. So for example, it sends first segment, receives the acknowledgement. In the next RTT time, this is the RTT time. So segment received and the acknowledgement received is 1 RTT. So then it sends 2 segments. So because it receives the 2 acknowledgements for the 2 segments sends in the RTT, it next sends the 4 segments. So if the 4 acknowledgements are received within the RTT, it sends the 8 segments, right? So it increases the transmission rate exponentially until the first loss event. So double the congestion window every RTT. If you see, every RTT the congestion size window is doubled. So done by incrementing the congestion window for every acknowledgement. Initial rate is slow, but it ramps up to exponentially very fast. Alright, so in this case, if the timeout or the loss occurs after 3 duplicate acknowledgements, I am talking about slow start. After 3 duplicate acknowledgements, congestion window is cut to half, and then the window grows linearly. So if there is a loss, how does the loss occurs? Either by 3 duplicate acknowledgements. So if the 3 duplicate acknowledgements are received, then congestion window is cut to half, and congestion window size after that will grow linearly. But if there is a timeout event, in case of timeout event is during that round trip time this acknowledgement is not received, right? So this is called as timeout event. In this case, congestion window, instead it will set to 1 MSS. It will not be cut to half, it will be set to 1 MSS, and then window will grow exponentially to a threshold value and then grows linearly. So the philosophy is, if the 3 duplicate acknowledgements are received, it indicates network is capable of delivering some segments. Timeout is a more alarming event. So in this case, the congestion window is set to 1 MSS. So we have over here the refinement. When should the exponential increase switch to linear? When the congestion window gets half of its value before timeout. So if you see over here, in the slow start, let's go back. It increases exponentially 1, 2 and 4. So if you see, first it sends 1 segment, then 2 segments, then 4 segments, then 8 segments, and maybe at this point the threshold is received, and then it sends 2 again, because that was the threshold. So it sends 2 again. Now at this point it reaches. Now at this point, let's assume that there is either 3 duplicate acknowledgements received, or there is a timeout event. Now if the timeout event occurs, so in this case the congestion window size will be set to 1 MSS. If you see over here, if the timeout event, congestion window size is set to 1 MSS, and after that it will grow exponentially. So if you see over it, 1, 2, 4, 8, and then it grows. But if at this point, let's assume that 3 duplicate acknowledgements are received, so in that case the congestion window size is cut to half of the present congestion window size. So the present congestion window size is 12, and it will cut half, which is the 6. If we go back, it is cut in half. After that it grows linearly. So if you see, now the window is growing linearly from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, 9 to 10, and so on. So this is how it handles the loss. If at a particular point, it deals differently if the 3 acknowledgements received or a timeout event. So exponential increase switch to linear when the congestion window gets half of its value before timeout. So we have a threshold value at the loss event. Threshold is set to half of the congestion window just before the loss event. Alright. So this was all about the chapter 3. We learned about the principles of transport layer, multiplexing, demultiplexing, reliable data transfer, connection oriented. Then we talked about the 2 protocols, UDP and TCP. And now we are going to talk about, in the next chapters, the network layer. So leaving the network edge, application and transport layer, now we go into the network core, which is the network layer. We are going to talk about routers more. So we are going to leave the edge of the network, which covers the host. we are going to more explore the network inside or the network core more in the next coming chapter next week. So thank you so much.